Hey everyone, this is Rod. I hope you're doing well out there. Today, I wanted to talk to you about Trump's call to Georgia Secretary of State seeking additional 11,779 votes. It was an interesting call. The call was an hour and 2 minutes long. Why would Trump make this call? Like, what is the purpose of this call? And there's a few reasons that comes out to me that seems kind of obvious when he made the call. So one of the things he wants to do, he wants to continue this rant of voter fraud. And we've proven over and over again that this voter fraud is it's not even true. He's still trying to claim it. And if he could get Georgia to overturn, a few thousand votes and to admit somehow they had voter fraud, then that's the little drip that he would need to start that whole process of voter fraud in other states. That would devastate the election process as far as, in his mind, I would think, of Biden, who's going to become elected January 20th. And then the other thing is, he could undermine the upcoming election in Georgia, the Senate race off, by claiming voter fraud in advance if they prove voter fraud for his presidency, so that whatever the outcome is, if the Democrats won, they could say that they had voter fraud. And he could say, we proved voter fraud. So that would disrupt that election. And I was thinking about this today. The only problem with him claiming voter fraud is that he claimed voter fraud before his election. So with the presidential race, he claimed voter fraud, but he claimed voter fraud before the election, and that's like a red flag. Like, how do you know there's going to be voter fraud before the election? You don't. So the reason why, in my opinion, that he claimed voter fraud before the election, because he's preparing himself so that if he did lose, he can say, "See, I told you, I had this narrative all along, voter fraud," and then he's been using this narrative. The other reason that Trump wanted to make this call was that it appears that he wanted to manipulate the Georgia Secretary of State officials, because it didn't matter. Like, he had many reasons and numbers that he blurted out why he thought there was voter fraud in the state of Georgia, but the Georgia Secretary of State officials, they came back and said that that wasn't true. These are our numbers, whatever it was, and he wasn't willing to listen to that. He just didn't seem to care. So it didn't matter what they said. He just wasn't interested. He had an agenda, and he wanted to manipulate them. And he wanted to manipulate them and giving the 11,779,000 votes. That's all he wanted. He had this big story about there's, over 200,000 votes or 400,000 votes difference, but he just needs 11,779,000 votes. They need to come up with it. He put a lot of pressure on them, manipulating them, and but to their credit, they're very respectful to the president, of course. Why wouldn't you be? And they stated their case, and they listened to him until he was talking anymore, and then they state their case. So to their credit, they stayed true to the values and the Constitution of this country. Regardless of what you're asking, it's like you're asking us to do something that's illegal. He even threatened them that that this is illegal what they're doing, and this, whatever he was saying, he threatened them. But it didn't seem to work. To their credit, I'm not even sure how this tape was released, or if he knew he was being recorded. I'm not sure. Takeaways from the call, though: the one thing about people that are con artists, or that lie or have mental illness, they always sound logical and reasonable. When you're listening to the president in this call, he sounds logical and reasonable as he's stating his case. But the problem is, when he's stating his case, he doesn't have any proof. So they're listening to him. His logical reasons of what he's saying. He's calm. He's logically stating his case, it would be almost believable if you didn't know this person when they say that we've given you many opportunities to present this information that you have. He's not willing to do it. His team hasn't been able to do it. So these accusations are not even proven. But that's the issue, that when people lie to us and con us, they always seem logical and reasonable, as he did. He reminds me of sometimes when you meet mentally ill people, and when you talk to mentally ill people, they are very logical and reasonable, as I mentioned before. They can mix the two worlds together. So they're talking to you in your world. You can talk about the weather and all this stuff, but then there's something in their filter changes, so that whatever you tell them, they change in their filter. So he's talking about voter fraud, and there was a voter election, there was a recent election, those kind of things. We can relate to a recent election, but then when you give him what the results of the election is, it goes through his filter and he changes it. And he says it's voter fraud, and that he's trying to approve this voter fraud or disprove her. He's not listening. And it's to the point where they say, well, prove to us this voter fraud. Well, he's not able to do it, but he's at the impression that he don't have to do it. It's like, it's so obvious there's voter fraud. We all know there's voter fraud. How can there be voter fraud? And he has these scenarios that he presents about voter fraud. And the scenarios that he presents are reasonable, but they're not true. There's no proof. What are you talking about? And the thing is, if it wasn't for him being the president of the United States, having the power that he has, that the post commands, people wouldn't be listening to this. You can almost understand why there's so many people out there that believe what he said, because he's so logical and reasonable, and he doesn't stop. He keeps coming and coming and coming. Most normal people don't do that, but this kind of person does that. Some people say that that's a narcissist trait in a personality, and I believe that. The president is not open to any type of proof. When you listen to this conversation, this hour and 2-minute conversation, he's not open to any type of proof. He states what he says, and he's listening to you, but he's not open to any type of proof. There was one point, there was a lady who was speaking, and he cut her off, and he said he wasn't interested in what she had to say. And one of the reasons is because she's asking for proof. She said that your office, we've contacted your office many times, asked for proof. You haven't given us anything. So he was kind of hostile with her, I felt, but he more wanted to talk to the men, which was interesting. So, but he wasn't open. He was telling them what he wanted. He needed 11,779 votes. That's all he needed. He gave you all the proof that you need. 200,000 votes, 400,000, whatever he was, the number, the exaggerated number he was given, and all that fraud. I just need 11,779 votes. You can give me that. 12,000 votes. That's what he's saying. So weird. Like, it feels like a con, but it also feels like a mental person who's just not on the same wavelength as everyone else. It's an odd thing. I wonder, another takeaway from the call, I wonder if the president believes what he's saying. Like, it's hard to say because they're so calm and they're so believable. It's like, do you believe what you're saying and this is what is going on? Or are you just so disconnected as a con artist because you've been doing it your whole life that this is just how you roll? I mean, that's the question I have. I don't know. I mean, it sounds like he believes it. Even though it's wrong, it sounds like he believes it, this fraud stuff. But I just don't know. Like, do you really believe it, or it's just part of your con? It's just hard to say. I mean, there's scenarios into this that makes it to be a con, which is you create doubt in this next election that's coming up so that the Republicans lose. Then you can say, well, I told you there was fraud involved. Or you open the floodgates where you get one state to admit fraud and you come up with all these numbers, and then we have to go back and look at all the other states, and this whole election is delayed. I start over again. I mean, who knows? It wouldn't be surprising me in any of these ways in this situation. Long-term ramifications of the situation is that the more he talks about it, the more he discredits this idea of voter fraud. He's not helping his case by talking about it and doing these things. It just discredits it. It's like it comes to a point you have to make a choice. Like, do I believe the evidence or do I just believe this man? And it's an important choice because your choice is possibly going against the Constitution of voting and what we have in place. And why would you? If there isn't any proof so that we can correct it, why would you go against it? The Constitution is the foundation of our country. It's the foundation of us and how we exist in this country. If there's no proof, then why would you go against it? Because Trump makes it seem like you're going against him, but you're not going against him. You're going against the Constitution. It's like we got to make a choice as Americans. I know people like Trump, but that doesn't matter here. This is, there's a saying in business that business is business. You could like a person, but business is business. You got to make a business decision. You could like an employee that works for you, but if they're not doing what they're supposed to do as far as business, you got to let them go. It's just business. You can't even make it personal. That's just the way it is. Business is business. If somebody's not doing the job they're supposed to do, you got to help them make a correction or they got to go. And that's the way this is. This is about our Constitution. It's not about a man, Trump. This is about the Constitution. And are we supporting and protecting that Constitution in our country? That's what we got to do. And you can see that some of these leaders aren't willing to do that. Like I did a video the other day, 12 Republican senators are going to make a stand of confirming the Electoral College for Biden. It's like, why would you do that? To do something like that, you're going against the Constitution. There's no reason to do that. So we see these leaders doing this. They're going against the Constitution. So you know what has to happen? We as American citizens, we're going to have to protect this Constitution. If our leaders aren't willing to do it in our behalf that we voted them for, then we have to protect our Constitution, meaning we don't listen to these leaders when they're talking their BS about voter fraud and all these things they're doing to disrupt our Constitution, disrupt our lives. We gotta vote them out. We as American citizens gotta protect. We can't allow leaders. We have that power. We have that power in our votes. We have that power. We'll listen to them or not listen to. We can let them know. We have that power. We got to let them know that this behavior is not okay. It's not acceptable. And the problem with this kind of behavior is that some citizens who trust our leaders, and it makes sense why you would trust the leaders, but some leaders can't be trusted. So some of these citizens who are trusting these leaders, they're being misled. And these citizens are confused. And those type of leaders that are hurting our citizens, we're all citizens. We're all in this together. We're all in this country together. Those type of leaders that are hurting our citizens, they've got to go. We got to vote them out. They've got to go. Trump is giving people more of a reason to come after him. He's exposing how vulnerable he is. He's exposing how corrupt he is, or how corrupt he's willing to act. It's like all these accusations that we heard about him before in the last 4 years must be true, because look how he's acting with this voter situation. He's trying to create a situation that doesn't exist, this voter fraud. He's just trying to create it. It doesn't even exist, but he's trying to create it as if it exists. We're playing into his hands because he claimed voter fraud before the election. And why would he do that? And possibly because if he lost, he can claim voter fraud. He can claim and try to twist and give himself some sort of hope to get this election, whatever it is. And that's just what he did. Just because you lost, you get to claim voter fraud, and we're buying into it. We're following this and we're buying into this because just because you lost the election, you get to claim voter fraud. How does that even make sense? But more importantly, how are leaders following this? I get how some citizens could be a little bit confused, but our leaders are following this. That's what I don't really understand. That's what upsets me the most. Trump is who he is, so we know who he is. So at this point, we're not really surprised by some of these things he's doing. The sooner he's out of office, the better, honestly. But these other leaders that are following Trump, that's what's surprising to me. Is that, like Obama says, they know better. And this is what they do. And them doing it confuses American people. And I said this the other day. That is white collar treason. Treason. When you go against the Constitution, when you go against Americans, just because another man tells you to. That's what kind of leaders we have. That needs to change. And as we as the American public, we can change that. We can change that by our vote. We can change that by being a no. What happens is when leaders continue to defy us and lie to us, it's like the boy cried wolf syndrome. After a while, we just stop believing them. We don't believe you anymore. You lose credibility with us. And a time will come when that will happen, when American people will realize that you betrayed them. And when that, or that you were spineless. And when that time comes, they will replace you. It's coming. Trump will be gone in a few weeks. Some of these other leaders will have careers after Trump, but they're not going to have much of a career, because it won't be long after Trump is gone that people are going to realize that they were betrayed by these leaders, and they're not going to accept that. So anyway, that's what I have today. Peace and hope, everyone.